Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Surah Al-Baqarah, verses 21 to 23. Dars-e-Quran-e-Hakim by thinker of the Quran, Allama Ghulam Ahmad Parwez. My dear friends, today is the 4th of August 1968, and in this new series of Quranic lessons, we had reached up to the 20th verse of Surah Al-Baqarah in the previous session. Today, the 21st verse is before us. The entire teaching of the Quran is based on explaining and establishing the system of Rububiyyat-e-Alamin. Let me briefly repeat that the Quran begins with Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, and its entire teaching revolves around this concept of Rububiyyat. If you wish to ask what the central pillar of the Quran is, what its fundamental point is, what its axis is, then it can be expressed in one word, Rububiyyat-e-Alamin. That is why you will see throughout the Quran that no other concept is repeated and emphasized as frequently as the concept of Rabb. All other concepts revolve around it. The axis or central pillar is the concept of Rububiyyat. Rububiyyat means to gradually develop something according to the potential hidden within it until it becomes what it is capable of becoming. The rububiyyat of a mango seed is that it is gradually nurtured until it becomes a mango tree that bears mangoes of the same kind. The rububiyyat of a chicken's chick is that it is raised until it becomes a hen capable of producing similar chicks. The rububiyyat of a human being, so far as his physical life is concerned, is also limited to this animal level.
At the animal level, there is no difference between the rububiyyat of humans and animals. You must have noticed that I just explained that the rububiyyat of a mango seed is to complete this entire cyclical order so that another mango of the same kind is produced. This is a circular movement. The rububiyyat of a chick is that it becomes a hen that lays an egg from which a similar chick emerges. See, again, this is a cyclical order, a movement in a circle. This rububiyyat has a limit. It cannot go beyond that. If the rububiyyat is incomplete, it will stop at that point, freeze, or become stagnant. And if the process continues, then this circular movement will keep going, producing the same kind of thing that you call reproduction. This is how rububiyyat functions at the animal level. You cannot take it beyond this. As I said, it will either freeze at that point or return to the same cycle. The rububiyyat of the human body follows the same pattern. Like every human child, if you nurture it, it will continue to grow. This growth has a final stage. After that, growth stops. What remains is maintenance, keeping the body as it is. And what is its final outcome? That it produces children of the same kind as it once was itself. This is the same cyclical order. The fundamental purpose of the physical rububiyyat of the human body is the development of the essence of humanity. My dear friends, a human being's life is not merely the life at the animal level. That is only one part of his life. You may call it the lower part. The higher part is what you call human life. The rububiyyat, nurturing and development of human life is absolutely essential. In fact, one may say that the rububiyyat of physical life is only a means for the rububiyyat of human life. The real objective is the development of his humanity. But the Quran gives a complete and comprehensive teaching. It does not ignore the rububiyyat of physical life, because if the means themselves do not remain, how will one reach the destination? If you have no means of travel, how will you go to Peshawar? Means of travel, resources, and provisions for growth are essential. A healthy and strong body, developed to its fullest potential, is necessary for the rububiyyat of human personality. But this is not the ultimate goal. It is only a medium, a cause, a tool for the development of humanity. As for the rububiyyat of humanity, it has no limit and no end. In physical rububiyyat, as I mentioned earlier, there comes a point, a destination, where growth stops or returns into a cyclical movement. But the development of humanity is limitless. It has no boundary. And at this level of life, one may say that its growth begins here. It is capable of continuous advancement. This combined development of physical and human life is what constitutes rububiyyat.
The development of human rububiyyat is meant to be boundless. The Quran does not stop at individual rububiyyat. It is Rabbul Alameen, and it desires rububiyyati alamini, the nurturing of all worlds. Not the development of one individual, not of one party, not of one nation, but of the entire human race. Now the ultimate vision of the Quran becomes clear. Rububiyyati alamini means the development of the entire human species. Such development that every human being physically becomes all that a human body can become, and after that, his humanity continues to grow. And this is a growth that can never stop at any point. The Quran says, فَلَا تَمُوتُنَّ إِلَّا وَأَنْتُمْ مُسْلِمُونَ. Remember, until the moment of death, you must continue to live the life of a Muslim. This does not mean that one reaches a certain point and then says, well, now everything is complete. We have reached where we needed to reach. This is either the thinking of purely physical life or the thinking of monastic life, where they imagine they have arrived. You know the expression, a reached one, someone who thinks he has attained everything. But here, the very idea of having reached does not exist. Life is a flowing stream, and at this level, the concept of arrival is itself incorrect. It is about moving forward, continuously advancing, constant motion, persistent effort, and ongoing struggle. And that is what life is. To stop at any point is death. After that, such a life is no longer the life of Islam. The Quran said that until your last breath, you must remain Muslim. One cannot remain Muslim by standing still in stagnation. How to bring the great program of Rububiyyati alamini to completion. This is the fundamental teaching of the Quran, and the entire Quran revolves around this central axis. It explains it theoretically, presents arguments, provides evidence, and then gives a practical program for how Rububiyyati alamini can be established. The discussion begins with Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, 1:1. And then in the first 20 verses of Surah Al-Baqarah, as we saw in previous lessons, two major groups appear before us. One group consists of those who care only for their own rububiyyat, who think only of their own development. Within this group are those who desire only physical development, who hold a materialistic concept of life, believing that life is nothing but this physical existence and its growth is the only goal. They remain occupied with the development of physical life. Even though this is still something tangible, even if only at the animal level, it is at least a concrete reality. On the other side is another group completely deluded, who say that physical development, bodily growth, and worldly life are nothing. According to them, the real thing is spiritual life. And this so-called spirituality is shaped entirely by each person's own mind and imagination. It has no objective existence outside. It is an illusion. One may consume it oneself or feed it to others as much as one likes. It is the most futile of life. But there is a life that the Quran calls the life of a mu'min, expressed in the prayer, آتِنَا فِي الدُّنْيَا حَسَنَةً وَفِي الْآخِرَةِ حَسَنَةً. I presented this verse at the end of the previous lesson. It means that one's physical life in this world should be fully developed, and one's human personality, which must progress beyond that, should also be fully developed. This is Islam. This is its program. And now we proceed further under this framework. The outcome of monasticism and life at the animal level. Two broad groups have now appeared before us. One is the group that focuses only on the development of the self. Within this, as I explained, are those who seek only physical growth and do not move beyond it. The second group lives entirely in a world of dreams, deceiving themselves into believing that their spirituality is growing. In the entire Quran, there is one place where such people are mentioned, those who adopted monasticism. The Quran says, "We did not prescribe it for them. They invented it themselves. And then they could not even uphold it." End of story. Throughout the Quran, you will see the clash between these two groups. They seek only their own development, and that too, purely material development. By their own, the Quran means development at the animal level, which includes family, children, and physical well-being. Even animals reach this level. They care for their own physical needs and those of their offspring. This becomes one group, the group of kufr. Regarding them, the Quran says, وَالَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا يَتَمَتَّعُونَ وَيَأْكُلُونَ كَمَا تَأْكُلُ الْأَنْعَامُ. These are the people who enjoy material benefits, who eat and drink and then die, living merely a physical life, like cattle. With what does the Quranic system of life compare? This very clash is what appears throughout the rest of the Quran. This is kufr versus Islam, truth versus falsehood. The Quran presents only this confrontation. As for those who consider worldly responsibilities contemptible and retreat into caves or withdraw into the caves of their own minds, the Quran considers them marfu'ul qalam, meaning not even worthy of being brought into the discussion. That is why the Quran does not call itself a rival of religion. It does not even consider the world of monastic religiosity worthy of debate. Instead, it says, لِيُظْهِرَهُ عَلَى الدِّينِ كُلِّهِ, meaning that the Quranic system of life will be compared with the actual systems of life operating in the world. Compare it with those systems, and it will ultimately prevail over all of them. That so-called spirituality, which is nothing but self-deception, is not a system of life. A system of life is one that wants to live, that functions within the realities of life. Now, these two groups stand before us. Against this background, you saw that we had reached the 20th verse. Now, the Quran brings these two groups into practical view. Dear brothers, after this conceptual introduction, the Quran now presents these two groups in practical terms, what they do and what their way of life is. Ayyuhan nasu. Notice that the Lord of all worlds addresses al-nas, all humanity. At this point, there is not even a distinction between believer and disbeliever. The entire human race is addressed. He says, all mankind, worship your Rabb who created you. The meaning of ibadat has already been explained earlier. Since this new series of lessons is now running continuously and the audience is also attending regularly, I will not repeat earlier details. Otherwise, we will never be able to move forward. I will simply point towards them and proceed. The meaning of ibadat you already know. To keep oneself obedient to the divine laws. To channel all one's abilities into the framework laid down by those laws. Thus, he says, O mankind, shape yourselves into this mold. Live your lives according to these laws. This is the code of life, and for the success of this code, expend your abilities. For someone to be Rabb, it is necessary that he also provide the means of development for his creation. Whose code of life is this? Under whose laws are we asked to live? He says, خَلَقَكُمْ. Reflect on this. Again, the concept of Rabb appears. Which Rabb is this? Observe the beauty. خَلَقَكُمْ. The first thing is creation, bringing into existence. And with creation comes responsibility. The one who creates must also be the one who nurtures. That is why he calls himself أحسن الخالقين. He is not the only creator. He acknowledges that there are other creators in a limited sense. The difference is that his creation meets the highest standard of perfection. It is ahsan, while others inevitably fall short somewhere. But whoever creates, the Quran says, must also take responsibility for nurturing, for rububiyyat. This responsibility is instinctively visible even among animals, and to some extent in human beings as well. Why is the human being considered worse than animals in the sight of Ahsanul Khaliqeen? The human being has turned out to be a strange kind of creature, one whom the Quran says is even worse than animals. Animals instinctively do certain things. This unfortunate human does not even do that much. You will not find a single example in the animal world where an animal gives birth to its young and then fails to nurture it. But the condition of the human being is that he produces offspring but does not nurture them. بَلْ هُمْ أَضَلُّ. The Quran declares such humans even more misguided than animals. If the one who calls himself Ahsanul Khaliqeen were not also a Rabb, then what would he be? Thus he says, خَلَقَكُمْ وَالَّذِينَ مِنْ قَبْلِكُمْ. He created you and those before you. Reflect on this. Why mention those before us? What concern do we have with them? Speak to us about ourselves. But what the Quran states here is something truly profound. Our present generation is part of a continuous chain that began with the earliest human beings. If there had been a gap in this chain of humanity, where would we be today? In the animal world, many species have existed in which such an interruption occurred, and once that interruption happened, they never reappeared. The continuity of creation is what allows a species to survive, and this very continuity is a great sign of his rububiyyat. If he were to abandon rububiyyat after creation, the species would perish. The chain could not continue. Our very existence is testimony that he has been continuously nurturing humanity. According to the Sufis, all souls were created at once and made to acknowledge his lordship. This reminds me of something, an important and rather interesting point. In the world of spirituality, especially among the Sufis, you must have heard of Mast alast and Roze alast, and then the phrase Qalu bala is also well known. If you are familiar with poetry, you know how poets weave elaborate themes around these ideas, intoxication with the wine of alast, mystical anecdotes hidden in qalu bala, and so on. In reality, all these dreamlike notions, as Sheikh Ali Hazin said, tasawwuf baraye sher guftan khub ast. Sufism is excellent for composing poetry. For poetry, mysticism is indeed a fascinating thing. For example, Mast alast, Roze alast, what do they claim? That God created all souls at once, seated them before him, and said, Alastu bi rabbikum. In Arabic, this phrase means exactly that. The word alist comes from lace, hence the term alast. He asked, Am I not your Rabb? And they replied, Qalu bala. Yes, indeed, you are our Rabb. So they say, this was the covenant made there. Sarde utte nikah arshante padiya gaya. Qalu bala je ho gaya. Meaning, our marriage contract was read on the heavens. Qalu bala was pronounced. If only you too had passed through those mystical stations as I have, then you would have tasted the delight of that qalu bala.
The Sufi concept of ishq has imprisoned every human being in the cage of fitra. According to this view, that acknowledgement of God took place there. What happened next? They say that every human child who is born comes into the world already having made that acknowledgement. And then the argument continues. If you place even one crooked brick at the foundation, tausir yamira va divar kaj, the whole wall will rise crooked. Thus they conclude that every child is born upon fitta. What does that mean? They say he is born carrying the acknowledgement of God. Then what about the fact that the whole world criticizes him, saying that this fitra changes? Meaning fitra is something that can change? Oh, unfortunate one, fitra is precisely that which cannot change. Fire's fitra is to give heat. Water's fitra is to flow downward. The moment fire stops giving heat, it is no longer fire. Fitra cannot change. Yet they insist, his fitra changes, because he had made the acknowledgement. The person says, but I have no memory of making any such acknowledgement. They reply, fine, you may not remember, but you did make it on the day of Alast. Now you deny it. You said, Qalu bala, 772. Very well then. This entire mystical system of Alast and Qalu bala is built upon a single Quranic verse.
In the light of the Quran, the meaning of Yawmul Alast and Qalu bala is actually proof of the rububiyat of humanity. Now bring back into view the background I just explained. The present human race itself is evidence that the one who created humanity has been continuously nurturing and protecting it. And that is why we exist today. If his rububiyat had not continued in this manner, we would not have survived. The Quran says, وَإِذْ أَخَذَ رَبُّكَ مِنْ بَنِي آدَمَ مِنْ زُهُورِهِمْ ذُرِّيَّتَهُمْ 7172. Your Rabb began bringing forth the progeny of the children of Adam from their backs. This is an Arabic idiom. You too use the term sulbi rishta, meaning from the loins, from the back. Lineage is expressed in this way. When humanity, the children of Adam, was carried forward generation after generation, this min zuhurihim zurliyatahum itself explains that human progeny continued through this chain. Then, wa ashhadahum ala anfusihim. This is worth deep reflection, my dear friends. And we made their own existence a testimony against themselves. A testimony to what? To this. Alastu bi rabbikum 7172, meaning we created you. Have we not been providing rububiyat?
The Quran's beautiful style in explaining human existence under the system of rububiyat. My dear friends, he says,
وَأَشْهَدَهُمْ عَلَى أَنفُسِهِمْ. Your very existence is a living testimony. How can you deny it? Those species that became extinct in the past, we cannot ask them anything today. Whom would we ask? They no longer exist. If we were to ask them where their chain ended, they would say, up to that point everything was fine. Beyond that, you were no longer our Rabb. And he would reply, then beyond that, I did not create you either. But those whom he is creating today, he asks them, and asks them in his beautiful style. What a magnificent way of expressing it. It is not that he gathers them and takes a verbal pledge. Rather, he says, deny if you wish. Your very existence testifies. The continuous existence of humanity testifies. He says, Alastu bi rabbikum. Even if you do not say it with your tongues, your very being says, Qalu bala, 7172. He says, we told you this so that you understand. The one who creates is the very one responsible for rububiyat. We created you. We are responsible for nurturing you. Your existence itself testifies that we are both the creator and the Rabb. Human beings will be held accountable for not establishing the system of rububiyat in their society. This is the meaning of Qalu bala shahidna, 7172. Your very existence is saying, we bear witness. He says, Shahidna an taqulu yawm al-qiyamati inna kunna an hadha ghafilin, 7172. We are telling you this repeatedly so that when that great revolution comes against your wrong ways, and you are asked why you did not establish the system of rububiyyat alamini, you should not be able to say, we did not know whether your program required nurturing or destruction, whether it demanded construction or demolition, whether it led to ruin or to development. This is the Quran style. The very existence of humanity testifies that He is Rabb. Now you understand the depth of خَلَقَكُمْ وَالَّذِينَ مِنْ قَبْلِكُمْ 221, why it was mentioned alongside. Why the command فَعْبُدُوا, so that you place yourselves under His system. Why place yourselves under it? لَعَلَّكُمْ تَتَّقُونَ 221, so that you may remain safe from the dangers along the path. The Quranic meaning of book and wisdom, and why both are essential. You must have noticed that the Quran often says, we sent down the book and the wisdom. What does book mean? What does wisdom mean? Book, kitab, means law. Wisdom, hikmah, means the reason behind the law, the why of it. Why is something commanded? Because if you act upon that law, it will produce a specific result. For example, light the fire, place the pot on the stove so that the water may boil. The instruction, light the fire, place the pot, is the book, the law. The reason, so that the water may boil, is the wisdom. The miracle of the Quran is that wherever it gives a law, it also gives the reason, the purpose, the outcome, the lima. If this reason were not given, we would simply assume on our own that we are following the law correctly. He says, live according to our laws so that your worldly life becomes pleasant and constructive. If this so that were not given, we would follow the law in any way we pleased, and there would be no standard to test whether we were actually following it. A simple example, how la'alakum exposes self-deception. A mother says, "Oh daughter, light the fire and place the pot on it." "Yes, mother, I've done it." 5 minutes later, the mother returns, lifts the lid, and finds the water cold. "Oh girl, I told you to light the fire and put the pot on it." "Mother, I did light it." The mother didn't check the stove, she checked the result. The water was cold, therefore the fire was not lit or it went out. The daughter insists she lit it, but the la'alakum, the expected outcome, proves she did not. This is why the Quran gives la'alakum, so that you do not remain trapped in self-deception. One should not even use the word satisfaction here, it is self-delusion. The test of whether you are following His laws is simple. If the outcome He promised is appearing, then you are following the law. If the outcome is not appearing, then you are not following it, no matter how perfect your rituals, forms, or outward displays may be. Just as little girls imitate all the rituals of a wedding in their doll marriages, but no real marriage takes place, similarly, without la'alakum, all rituals would be empty forms.
Why the Quran gives both law and wisdom. He says, لَعَلَّكُمْ تَتَّقُونَ 221, so that you may walk safely through the dangerous valleys of life. Remember the testimony of Alastu bi Rabbikum 7172. If humanity had not been protected from these dangers, if tattaqun had not been ensured, this species would not have survived to this day. In our society, worship, ibadat, has been replaced by mere ritualistic devotion, tarastish. He says, now that you exist, do what we command. Very well, we reply, we will worship you. After all, we already do. But what are we actually doing? Ritualistic devotion, not worship. If the Quran had stopped here, everyone would have remained satisfied with their own forms of devotion. But the verse does not end at رَبَّكُمُ الَّذِي خَلَقَكُمْ 2:21, your Rabb who created you. There is no full stop here. The verse continues with الَّذِي, and we must read further so that the matter does not end prematurely. It says, الَّذِي جَعَلَ لَكُمُ الْأَرْضَ فِرَاشًا وَالسَّمَاءَ بِنَاءً وَأَنزَلَ مِنَ السَّمَاءِ مَاءً فَأَخْرَجَ بِهِ مِنَ الثَّمَرَاتِ رِزْقًا لَكُمْ 2:22. This is the rububiyyat of the Creator. He created you, and just as good mothers prepare everything for their child even before the child is born, He prepared all provisions for your nurturing before your birth. This earth serves two purposes for you: as a magnificent carpet for your dwelling, and as a storehouse of nourishment buried within it for your sustenance. The sky is a protective roof. Explaining this fully would take time. I will elaborate when we reach that verse in detail. For now, this much is enough.
The astonishing protective system in space that enables the program of Rububiyat. Ask any scientist, the only reason we are alive on this surface of the Earth is because of the atmosphere, roughly 10 miles thick above our heads. Beyond it, from the celestial bodies, millions upon millions of massive rocks fall every second. If even one of them were to reach the Earth's surface, it would pulverize the entire planet. But the protection above us, the atmospheric shield, rotates with such tremendous speed that these mountain-sized rocks are ground into dust before they can reach us. Do you know how rapid motion reduces solid matter to dust? Think of modern shake machines, like a milkshake blender. Put solid items inside, press a button. There is no grinding stone, no mill, no crushing mechanism, just a small metal rod spinning at high speed. Salt, spices, anything solid, all reduced to powder in seconds. Such is the power of rapid motion. The rotation of the atmospheric layers grinds those cosmic rocks into fine dust.
Every particle of the universe is working for the nourishment of the human body. The light that reaches you cannot travel directly through empty space. What reaches you is the glow of those sunlit dust particles, illuminated, radiant, carrying light to your eyes. The very thing that could have destroyed your planet becomes light for you, becomes vision for your eyes. This is the meaning of وَالسَّمَاءَ بِنَاءً 2:22. What appears above you is, in reality, the very foundation of your life. What a magnificent expression of the Quran! And from this same sky comes water, essential for growth. From this sky descends distilled, purified water delivered to every home. Whatever is surplus is stored on mountaintops in frozen reservoirs, so that in the heat of summer, when rain does not fall, it melts under the sun's warmth and flows down to your homes. This is the water supply system. فَأَخْرَجَ بِهِ مِنَ الثَّمَرَاتِ رِزْقًا لَكُمْ. With this water, he brings forth fruits from the earth as sustenance for you. The earth is fertile, endowed with the capacity to produce. Water accompanies it. Heat accompanies it. Light accompanies it. All arranged for your nourishment. The arrangement for a child's nourishment in the mother's womb. I ask you, does any child bring along any of these provisions at the time of birth? Not only does he not bring anything with him, even before birth, in the place where he is being nurtured, none of these things exist. There is only one kind of heat there, and that is the mother's bodily warmth, not the heat of the sun. What could he possibly bring with him? Just as a mother prepares little patole yai banaisan, tiny clothes and items before the child is born, the great creator of this universe prepared all provisions for the child before his birth. He says, Ya ayyuhan nas u'budu. Have you ever reflected on why he said an-nas, all humanity? Because the provisions for nourishment are the same for the child of a disbeliever and the child of a believer. The provisions for growth must be used collectively according to the divine laws.
After showing all these arrangements, he says, and this is something to listen to with great attention, my dear friends. فَلَا تَجْعَلُوا لِلَّهِ أَنْدَادًا وَأَنْتُمْ تَعْلَمُونَ. Do not set up andad for God while you know. The word nid, plural andad, literally means an equal, but in Arabic it refers to something that pulls in the opposite direction, a counterforce. What does this mean? He says, all these provisions for nourishment were given so that rububiyyat-e-alamini may be established. The child we created, the provisions for his nurturing and growth were provided by us. This is our rububiyyat. We are the Rabb. But if you create a system or a mechanism that pulls this provision away from where we are directing it, if we pull it toward nurturing and you pull it toward something else, then you have made partners with God. How easy we made religion for ourselves. Do not worship idols. What difference does idol worship make? What harm does it cause? The Quran is not talking about statues. It is talking about andad, counterforces. Anything that diverts the resources of rububiyyat away from where God directs them, that is shirk.
A radiant hadith that explains how the system of rububiyyat works in practice. My dear brothers, there is a hadith of the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam that shines like a diamond. In any settlement where even one person sleeps hungry at night, God withdraws his protection from that settlement. Now you understand the meaning of لَعَلَّكُمْ تَتَّقُونَ 2:21, so that you may remain safe. If even one person sleeps hungry, the community has violated the system of rububiyyat. They did not allow God to remain Rabb. The sustenance that should have reached that hungry person was diverted elsewhere, taken by someone else. And when that happens, the divine protection is withdrawn. Considering the sources of sustenance as personal property is shirk. My dear brothers, whatever these people accumulate, what is this wealth they gather? It is precisely that sustenance which was meant to reach someone else. If there were surplus lying unused, then gather as much as you like. That is not the issue. But when the situation is such that, for example, 10 years ago reports showed that 50% of the world's population slept hungry, and now the latest reports say 75% sleep hungry, then who is pulling their share of sustenance toward themselves? These are the andadan, those who become counterforces, min dunillahi andadan, 265, and wa antum ta'lamun. It is not as if you do this out of ignorance or unawareness. You know very well that you have already received what you needed for your own development. Whatever extra you take now was meant for someone else's development. It was given to them by the Rabb. I have said that the Quran calls this shirk. To consider the sources of sustenance as personal property is, according to the Quran, both kufr and shirk. Here I have mentioned only that it is shirk. The Quran says, قُلْ أَإِنَّكُمْ لَتَكْفُرُونَ بِالَّذِي 41:9. Say, are you the people? What a powerful way of speaking. Are you the ones who commit kufr against God? Against that God, الَّذِي خَلَقَ الْأَرْضَ فِي يَوْمَيْنِ 41:9, who created the earth in 2 periods, the first being such that no living being could survive on it due to extreme heat. Then he cooled it down, and the second period began, in which you became capable of living on it. This is what he did first, and you deny this God? وَتَجْعَلُونَ لَهُ أَنْدَادًا 41:9, and you set up rivals for him? You become his counterforces? ذَلِكَ رَبُّ الْعَالَمِينَ 41:9. That is the Rabb of all worlds. And what are you doing? Pulling everything towards yourselves. This is kufr. This is shirk. The earth's structure and seasons, all created for universal nourishment. وَجَعَلَ فِيهَا رَوَاسِيَ مِنْ فَوْقِهَا وَبَارَكَ فِيهَا. He placed massive mountains upon it. One day when we reach this verse, I will explain what mountains do for the nourishment of life within the earth. وَبَارَكَ فِيهَا. That lush, dark green vegetation that appears during the rainy season, that is called barakah. We placed within it the means of barakah. وَقَدَّرَ فِيهَا أَقْوَاتَهَا فِي أَرْبَعَةِ أَيَّامٍ. He arranged the changes of seasons into 4 cycles so that food continues to be produced from the earth. Do you deny this God? Do you set up partners with him when he created all this for rububiyyati alamini and you pull it in another direction? Listen, my dear friends, how clearly he explains it. We created this entire system for what purpose? سَوَاءً لِلسَّائِلِينَ, so that it remains equally open for every needy person.
For any needy person to be deprived of this flowing spring, my dear brothers, is kufr, is shirk. The Prophet said, keep God's earth open for God's servants. Another radiant hadith of the Prophet ﷺ conveys the same meaning as this Quranic verse. It consists of just 4 words. Allah's earth is for Allah's servants.
Ending feudal mentality in the time of Prophet Saleh alayhi salam. The Quran mentions the people of Thamud. Prophet Saleh alayhi salam was sent to him. This was an era when human livelihood depended on livestock. Grazing lands were open, and springs of water were available so that animals could roam freely. But the powerful and influential among them drew lines on the land and declared, these are our grazing fields, these are our springs. Those who lacked power, where were their animals to graze? From where were they to drink? For this very reason, God says he sent a messenger. A messenger is a profoundly revolutionary figure. He comes to rescue human beings from the jaws of those beasts, oppressors, who trap them. Prophet Saleh alayhi salam conveyed this message. These animals are God's creation. This land is God's creation. Leave it open for the nourishment and growth of his creation. Every animal will graze according to its need. No one carries the grass away. The Qur'an's striking illustration. Animals do not claim ownership. The Qur'an says something remarkable elsewhere. Have you ever seen a bull that, after grazing, carries a bundle of grass on its back to take home? Yet you have created the system. These are my cattle, my sheep, my goats, and this is my land. Only my animals will graze here. The Qur'an declares this the fundamental error. All creatures belong to God. All sustenance has been created by him for them. They are his creation. The provisions are his. Who are you to divide it into mine and yours? The she-camel of Prophet Saleh alayhi salam, a symbol of the Qur'an's entire economic system. They said, all right, we will do as you say. Prophet Saleh alayhi salam replied, this is not a matter of verbal promise. There must be a sign that you will truly uphold this. He said, here is a she-camel. She is neither mine nor yours. She belongs to none of us. She will graze freely. If anyone stops her, claiming she grazed on my land, it will mean you have violated the agreement. But if she grazes wherever she finds pasture, it will show that you are honoring your commitment. Thus, this she-camel became the sign of their adherence to the agreement. Hadihi naqatullahi. This is the she-camel of Allah. See how the distinction of mine and yours is erased? Neither mine nor yours. The one who created her, she belongs to him. God created her. She is God's she-camel. Remember this principle. Whenever God attributes something to himself, whenever he calls something his, it means no individual has the right to claim personal ownership over it. The Prophet said that no house in Makkah may be rented out. God called the Kaaba Baytullah, my house. Does he physically dwell there? Of course not. The meaning is simply this. No one can claim ownership over it. And the intent was not just the building, it was the entire system surrounding it. This reminds me of another instruction of the Prophet ﷺ. No house in Mecca may be rented out, meaning the very concept of private ownership was abolished there. What a revolutionary people they were. The Quran says, Naqatullah, the she-camel of Allah. The next words are, Lakum ayatan, a sign for you, a sign of whether you remain faithful to your covenant or not. Look how practical these people were. They ensured that no dispute could arise later. But among us, a strange story became popular, that this she-camel was a rock which Prophet Saleh alayhi salam struck with his staff, and from it the camel burst forth. Nishani ayo jahi honi jahidi hegi hai na? A sign must be something dramatic like this, right? But I explained the real point. Hadihi naqatullahi lakum ayatan, fadharuha. This is Allah's she-camel, a sign for you. Leave her alone. Do not obstruct her path. Why? Ta'kul, so that she may graze freely. Then he says, fi ardillah, in the earth of Allah. Let her roam in God's land and drink water in her turn. 91:13. Meaning, this naqatullah will eat and drink fi ardillah, in God's land. God's land, God's creatures. O tusi chache lagde ovich. Are you their uncles or something? This is Tawheed. Why 2 prophets were sent against Pharaoh? My dear brothers,
Do you know why such a mighty revolutionary like Moses alayhi salam had to be sent against Pharaoh? And not just one prophet, but two. What was Pharaoh's crime? Pharaonism has become a proverb for tyranny, but what exactly did he do? The Quran says his crime was this: أَلَيْسَ لِي مُلْكُ مِصْرَ? Is not the kingdom of Egypt mine? وَهَذِهِ الْأَنْهَارُ تَجْرِي مِنْ تَحْتِي? And these rivers flowing beneath me, are they not mine? He claimed, أَنَا رَبُّكُمُ الْأَعْلَى. I am your supreme Lord. And it wasn't just Pharaoh. Every tyrant, every ruler intoxicated with power behaves the same way. Even today, in dramas you hear the term andata, the giver of grain, the provider. That is exactly أَنَا رَبُّكُمُ الْأَعْلَى. God said to Moses alayhi salam, إِنَّهُ طَغَى. He has transgressed all bounds. His waters have overflowed their banks. He has become a flood. Go and stop him. He says, Egypt is mine. These rivers are mine. Tell him, they are not yours. The one who created them, they belong to him, and they belong to those for whom he created them.
The Quran's challenge: who created the heavens and the earth? In Surah Al-Naml, God says, أَمَّنْ خَلَقَ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضَ وَأَنزَلَ لَكُم مِّنَ السَّمَاءِ مَاءً فَأَنبَتْنَا بِهِ حَدَائِقَ ذَاتَ بَهْجَةٍ مَا كَانَ لَكُمْ أَن تُنبِتُوا شَجَرَهَا 2760. Tell me, who created the heavens and the earth? Who sends down rain from the sky? Who placed within the earth the capacities that produce gardens full of beauty for you? You could never have caused these trees to grow if we had not placed these capacities within the earth. Say it, if you have the courage, that you created all this. You did not. Then he asks, أَإِلَهٌ مَعَ اللَّهِ? Is there any God alongside Allah? Why then do you hand these resources into the ownership of others, making them gods beside him? An ilah is one who holds power, and who holds greater power than the one into whose hands the sources of sustenance are placed? This is the secret of human subjugation, my dear brothers. Otherwise, no human being naturally wishes to bow before another. Human economic deprivation is what forces a person to bow before another. A lion dances to your gestures only because you keep it hungry. Try making a well-fed lion dance. This is how human beings are controlled, by holding the sources of sustenance in one's hands, starving others so that they can be made to obey any command. أَإِلَهٌ مَعَ اللَّهِ بَلْ هُمْ قَوْمٌ يَعْدِلُونَ. Those who think like this are nations that do not remain established on justice. They choose slavery. If I go into full detail, my dear brothers, we would need countless lessons, but I do not want to leave the core point incomplete. You must have noticed that the Quran repeatedly says, لِلَّهِ مَا فِي السَّمَاوَاتِ وَمَا فِي الْأَرْضِ 2:284. لَهُ مَا فِي السَّمَاوَاتِ وَمَا فِي الْأَرْضِ 4:171. He calls the earth Ardullah, God's earth. Those who know Arabic understand that the letter la sometimes denotes ownership and sometimes it denotes benefit. When the Quran says that everything in the heavens and the earth is lillahi, it cannot mean that God benefits from it. What benefit would God take? Here, la can only mean ownership. Everything in the heavens and the earth belongs to God. No one else can be its owner. But elsewhere the Quran says, هُوَ الَّذِي خَلَقَ لَكُم مَّا فِي الْأَرْضِ جَمِيعًا. He is the one who created for you everything that is in the earth. Here again is lakum, but this la is not ownership, it is benefit. He created it for your use, not for your ownership. If this la were also ownership, then the Quran would contradict itself, one saying everything belongs to God, another saying everything belongs to you. Impossible. God does not teach shirk. This lakum means for your benefit. This is clarified elsewhere. وَجَعَلْنَا لَكُمْ فِيهَا مَعَايِشَ 7:10. We created means of livelihood for you. Ma'ayisha means the provisions of life, the things that allow you to live. Another verse says, أَنزَلَ مِنَ السَّمَاءِ مَاءً لَكُمْ 16:10. He sent down water from the sky for you. And رِزْقًا لِلْعِبَادِ 50:11. Sustenance for the servants. The Quran teaches that the concept of private ownership does not exist. The Quran makes it clear. Ownership, in the absolute sense, does not belong to human beings. Nothing can truly be owned by a person. Even according to your worldly laws, ownership is valid only if you bought something or inherited it. But the real question is, the first person who drew a line on the earth and declared, "This is my land," from which father did he inherit it?
Where did he buy it from? If the original claim of ownership was illegitimate, then every subsequent transaction of ownership built upon it is also illegitimate. All these transfers of ownership that humanity claims, all of them are invalid. They cannot be legitimate. This is Pharaohism, nothing else.
A man of truth speaking boldly about land ownership in the presence of the Wali of Swat. When it comes to Pharaohism, some people express the truth in remarkably powerful ways. I will not mention his name. He is a courageous, truly revolutionary Quranic thinker, and he is still alive. Once, he was in the state of Swat, a Muslim princely state at that time. A grand celebratory gathering was being held, and the Wali, the ruler, himself was presiding over it. As is customary, the event began with the recitation of the Quran. The reciter read, Lillahi ma fis samawati wa ma fil ard. This man was sitting there. Now observe the revolutionary spirit. He suddenly stood up and said, You are lying. The Wali, who was presiding, said, Sit down, it is the Quran being recited. He replied, You are bearing witness to a lie. The Wali ordered, Arrest him. He said, After you hear my explanation, if it is false, then arrest me. They made him sit and asked, What are you saying? He said, For the entire past week I have been in your revenue offices. I examined all the land records of your state. In the column for land ownership, the Patwaris have written your name everywhere. I kept searching to see whether in even one place God's name was written in that ownership column. But no, in your practical system, the entire land belongs to you. Yet here the Quran says, Lillahi ma fis samawati wa ma fil ard. I have not yet gone to the heavens, but I have certainly examined the earth, and in the ownership records of the earth, God's name appears nowhere. Only your name is written everywhere. This Quranic verse is being recited before you, and you endorse it, while your own system openly contradicts it. You both should be ashamed. The secret of a paradise on earth lies in this very strike of Moses. Every possessor of the strike of Moses, Zerbe Kalim, comes only to proclaim this. Naqatullah, Ardillah, 1164. Lillahi ma fis samawati wa ma fil ard, 284. My dear brothers, the day humanity truly understands this, you will witness how this hell of yours transforms into a paradise on earth. The Quran describes the earthly paradise with this feature, وَكُلَا مِنْهَا رَغَدًا حَيْثُ شِئْتُمَا, 235. Eat freely from wherever you wish, whenever you feel hungry. This is paradise. This is the oneness of God. This is servitude to God. Recognize only one authority, and do not set up any counterforce, nid, beside him. This is Tawheed. Ya ayyuhan nasu u'budu rabbakumul ladhi, 221. O mankind, submit to the Rabb, establish a system according to his law. He created you, created those before you, provided the means of rububiyat. Do not create anything that pulls people away from his purpose while he pulls them toward it. This conflict becomes hell. Do not do this. فَلَا تَجْعَلُوا لِلَّهِ أَنْدَادًا وَأَنْتُمْ تَعْلَمُونَ, 222. Do not set up rivals to God while you know. What a tremendous declaration, a revolutionary proclamation for all humanity.
If doubts arise about this revolutionary message, some hearts may hesitate. This system is so deeply established in humanity, how can such a statement overturn it? We know what your self-interest whispers. So the Quran says, وَإِن كُنْتُمْ فِي رَيْبٍ مِمَّا نَزَّلْنَا عَلَى عَبْدِنَا. If you are in doubt about what we have revealed to our servant, if you suspect that this document is not from the true owner of the earth, that this charter is not his, then the remedy is simple. Every court in the world would say the same. فَأَتُوا بِسُورَةٍ مِّن مِثْلِهِ. Produce a counter-document proving your ownership. Bring your deed of ownership. Here is the document we present. Now bring yours. Ji asi velete hani kul. We don't have it right now. Koi gal nahi, asi tarikh te din deya. No problem. We'll give you more time. Wad'u shuhada'akum. Call your witnesses. Hold conferences. Form commissions. Gather the world's thinkers, philosophers, economists, geologists. Bring them all as witnesses. But listen carefully. Min dunillahi. No witness from God's side may appear for your defense. Do not bring God into your defense,
because then you will lose the case instantly. All human claims of ownership collapse before this argument. My dear brothers, every claim of private ownership is supported by documents and witnesses, but none of those witnesses include God. They are all other than God. He said, Min duni la, bring whoever you want except God, because God is the plaintiff in this case. If you call him as a defense witness, you lose immediately. What a fair judge, what justice in this court. In kuntum sadiqeen, if you are truthful, bring your document. And he announces the verdict beforehand. فَإِن لَمْ تَفْعَلُوا وَلَن تَفْعَلُوا. You will not do it, and you will never be able to do it. And if you cannot, then what follows? The session ends. The case continues next week. Time is up today, my dear brothers. We request the court for the next hearing. We have reached only verses 21 to 23 of Surah Al-Baqarah. We will resume this case next Sunday. ربنا تقبل منا إنك أنت السميع العليم.